being told you're not trying hard enough when you're trying your hardest? How would that make you feel? This is how many dyslexics feel in academic environments where they're not conducive to their learning needs. I was diagnosed with dyslexia after my parents realized I was falling behind in English while excelling in math. My parents then had me evaluated for learning disabilities, and each of the very long tests showed I had dyslexia. My parents were concerned I never learned how to read due to my public school not having the proper resources or techniques to teach a dyslexic student like myself. So, they found a school that specialized in language-based learning disabilities called the Windward School. This is the school that changed my academic life forever. Here, I learned how to read, specifically decode words, write essays, and draft complex research papers. When I transferred to Windward in 3rd grade, I became surrounded by peers who also had dyslexia and teachers who understood our learning differences. Even though it was encouraging to be around peers and faculty who understood dyslexia, I realized outside of Windward, many people were uneducated. My goal today is to inform and build awareness about dyslexia, to curb judgment, and clarify common misconceptions. Let's first start with the current definition of dyslexia. According to the International Dyslexia Association, dyslexia is a specific learning disability that is neurological in origin. What this means is that dyslexics have trouble matching letters to sound, the phonological component of our language. Phonological skills refer to our ability to take and manipulate sound units that make up the words of our language. For example, knowing when A makes the short sound ah instead of the long sound a, fundamentally changing the pronunciation of a word. This skill is essential for learning how to read, so naturally this is why dyslexics have trouble with reading and writing. Dyslexics also have trouble with multisyllabic words because by the time we figure out the end of the word, we may have forgotten the beginning. Take the word dangerous. When you split dangerous into its syllables, you get dane-ger-us. By the time you figure out that OUS sounds like us, you may have forgotten the beginning of the word. This makes following what we read very hard. However, this is not the only difficulty dyslexics come with reading. For example, when I was younger, I would skip function words like the, a, this, that, to focus more on these harder, multisyllabic words. According to the University of Michigan, dyslexics also struggle with rapid automatic naming, or RAN. The ability to quickly recall words is essential for reading comprehension. So, naturally, this is why dyslexics struggle after reading a long and difficult passage. Even though we know a lot about dyslexia now, this wasn't always the case. Specifically, researchers commonly misdiagnose dyslexia as a visual confusion, like seeing a B as a D or P as a Q. This idea was easy to latch onto, but far from true. Because I'd also like to emphasize that dyslexia is a spectrum. It ranges from mild to severe. Not one dyslexic is the same or struggles with the same things. Another common misconception about dyslexia is they can't follow the regular curriculum. However, this is just simply not true. All dyslexic needs is accommodations. Accommodations do not alter the regular curriculum. They could just be a slight change in a way a teacher may present the skill, or as simple as extra time on tests, spell check, and our audiobooks. The Individuals with Disabilities and Education Act, or IDEA, ensures that every single person with a disability in a school-like environment receives the proper accommodations they need to succeed. Another common misconception about dyslexia is that they have a low IQ. However, this is not the case. There's no relationship between low IQ and dyslexia. Specifically, Jennifer Aniston, Steve Jobs, Muhammad Ali, and Albert Einstein are just some of the few people that have dyslexia who has gone off to do amazing things. According to the Yale Center for Dyslexia and Creativity, dyslexia is found in 1 out of 5 people, or 20% of our population. However, this is an underestimate because half our population doesn't even get tested. Now, I'd like to talk about some things people face when diagnosed with dyslexia. Some people may be happy, finally knowing why they've been struggling for so long, while others may feel sad, thinking that dyslexia means they're dumb. However, as I mentioned before, there's no relationship between low IQ and dyslexia. Personally, I was too young to fully understand what being diagnosed meant. However, it wasn't until middle school until I fully realized what dyslexia was and how much harder I have to work to keep up with my classmates. Being diagnosed with dyslexia can be discouraging and frustrating because our mistakes may be seen as careless or laziness. It can be hard struggling with basic reading and writing skills while our classmates seem to have no problem. This can create a sense of failure and inferiority. According to the International Dyslexia Association, anxiety is the most frequent emotion associated with dyslexia in children and adults. Children who are anxious can even become fearful because of the constant anticipation of possible failure when asked to read or spell out loud. Some dyslexics struggle with communication, known as oral language functioning. Students who struggle with oral language functioning find it hard to say the right words and often pause before answering direct questions. Imagine being in a casual chat and forget your common words, or when given oral directions, find yourself lost and confused. Well, this is the reality of many dyslexics. Personally, I find it very hard to be given oral directions without finding myself confused. However, when given an example, I find myself asking less questions. There are many ways to teach a dyslexic student, but the best way is the Orton-Gilliam method. It breaks reading and spelling down into smaller skills, involving letters and sounds, and then builds on those skills with repetition over time. The Orton-Gilliam method builds upon the phonological component of our language, which is what dyslexics struggle with, which is why it's the best method. Teachers incorporate sight, hearing, touch, and movement in their teaching to best teach dyslexic. They move step by step through a progression of phonics skills from most common and most consistent letter patterns to least common and least consistent letter patterns. Dyslexia is often misunderstood as a disability and a setback, but it is really just a different way of thinking. Even though many dyslexics may struggle as students, many go off to do incredible things. Unfortunately, the misinformation regarding dyslexia is more commonly spread than the facts. One of the most common misconceptions about dyslexia is that it is a visual confusion. However, as I said before, it is a phonological-based disorder. I hope you can all walk away from this talk with a better understanding of dyslexia and the misinformation regarding it. We are not incapable of success, we just take a different road. Thank you.